Hello, welcome to Athens Speakout. Today is March 29th, 2016. We're on program 359 with Dr. Robert Whaley. Today we're going to talk about the Republican-Democrat races for delegates. And Mr. Whaley has followed this pretty close on through the paper and on TV, and he knows probably more about it than anybody here in Athens County. We're going to start out, Dr. Whaley. I'm going to ask you about the Republican and Democrat races to the conventions there. And if you want to start, do you want to start with Ohio and
Yes,
John
right.
Kasich and
Right.
Ted Cruz? And
One little amendment. I would like to emphasize that I am a retired historian from Ohio University.
That's all right.
And I look at the current races in terms of past presidents. And the big news on the 15th of March, 2016, was that Governor John Kasich won the Republican Party primary and was able to stay in the race. And Ohio has a winner-take-all system, and he won 66 delegates from the state of Ohio for the Republican National Committee. That saved his race so that he is sort of like a third-place runner in the basic Trump-Kasich fight that's still going on. In any case, it's a long way to the Cleveland convention, right?
We're showing the map right now, Robert.
Well, I'll talk about that when we get to it. But they can leave the map on.
Okay.
It won't hurt anything. Leave it on the map. But I want to talk about that a little bit later. I want to first finish up a little oral conversation about John Kasich and his race and his fight with trying to block Trump to win the nomination. Now, meanwhile, Senator Ted Cruz, who's the major rival of Trump, the big news there is that on the 15th of March, the same day as the Ohio primary, Cruz won big in Florida. And he took all of the delegates from Ohio, 66 of 67 counties, and Florida has a winner-take-all system, so that Cruz took all of the delegates from Ohio. So Kasich and Trump are in the race now for delegates, and Cruz is behind at the moment, and it looks like Trump may win, but there's still a long way to Cleveland. That's all I'll say about that. Now, Rubio, who was going to be the big winner in Florida, completely tanked, and he only got about 2% of the votes. And he's out of the race, and he's out of the race for November, although he may try some hanky-panky at the Cleveland convention and try and come back, because there's a lot of Republicans who want to block Trump. That's still to be fought over. Okay. Now, Missouri was another Trump victory, and that gave him some more delegates. So now I'm, I think, ready for the next question about the editorial of Terry Smith, and this is where map 1 comes into play.
yeah, let's go with the map.
Yeah, map 1.
Yeah, the Terry Smith and the Athens A-News commented on, or wrote an article actually about Trump and where his votes came from and everything. And the darker color there,
the blue and the red. The blue and the red.
Right.
Okay, the blue are
right.
Kasich, and the red are Trump.
That's right.
Okay.
So yeah, I was just getting ready. I couldn't tell what color that was due to the fact that the map's a different color. But anyway, yeah. So the red along the Ohio border there is
right along the river.
Right. Those are the counties that Trump took.
Right.
And then the blue are the counties that Kasich took.
That's correct.
So,
And Terry Smith's editorial was, why did Trump win the state of Ohio? And he put those maps on to explain it. And he spent most of his energy. However, Sanders...
I want to interrupt you, Robert. It wasn't... Kasich won the Ohio.
That's right. Kasich won Ohio.
Right.
And... no, Trump won. Oh, no, Trump... Wait a minute now. You got me confused. Kasich won in Ohio.
That's right.
But Terry was interested in Trump.
In the number of counties and which counties he won.
That's right.
Where they were at.
And he was interested in why... who are these Trump supporters?
Yeah.
That was his question.
What I find interesting is you look down there at the bottom in the Cincinnati area, which would be Hamilton County, and
he took all the big cities.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, that is a big Republican area, but
Columbus,
right,
Cleveland, all the big cities went for Trump in the Republican primary.
Right. But if people remember, I think you remember, Robert, that John Kasich took 86 of 88 counties in his election for governor.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much unheard of anywhere in the country for somebody to take, all but 2 counties in a state.
Right.
So I think it's interesting that Donald Trump was able to win that many counties in Ohio.
Right.
So.
But anyway, getting back to Terry Smith's editorial, he concentrated on Athens City. And his editorial was, I wonder where Trump gets his votes.
Yeah.
He couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And he said, it's right here. That amazed him.
Right.
And he said that he only met one voter who was for Trump.
Yeah.
They were all up in the northern part of the county, Gloucester, and he never went up there to interview. He only talked to people in Athens.
Right.
So,
but he only met one in Athens County, is that right?
He only met one to write this editorial. And he says, who are these people and where are they from? Well, they're out in the rural district. That's his point.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't mention it here on TV, but there's, and I had him as an economics prof, but I see a big Trump sign on his in front of his home on the east side of town. So
who?
I'm not naming.
Oh, you're
names,
not naming
but he was he taught economics here at Ohio University for quite a few years, and he is a Republican and he is supporting Trump. So.
I think I know him.
Yeah.
He's going with the money.
Anyway.
Well, anyway, looking at Athens County, looking at the Democratic side, 61% of the voters in Athens County voted for Sanders.
That's right.
That's quite a different race. And Clinton obtained only 38% of Athens County.
Were they able to break down those votes any more than what
you mean, the 38, 61?
What percentage of those people? You were talking about the Republicans. What about the Democrats? What percentage of those Democrats were they students? Were they?
Well, it was young. Yeah, the
young people.
The people under 30 went for Bernie.
Bernie Sanders.
And the older women went for Hillary.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a feminist masculine divide. There is a youth-old divide inside the Democratic Party. And Sanders is appealing to the youthful and idealistic New Dealers.
Yeah.
And
I just want to comment on Bernie Sanders for his campaign and is the people that I talk to. If most of the people that I talk to are Republicans or Libertarians, but the people that I talk to on the Democratic side are Sanders supporters. And if you just drive around, the different counties, the bumper stickers and everything that you see on cars, and signs in front of houses are Bernie Sanders. I think I've only seen one Hillary Clinton sign.
Okay.
and that was on a South Carolina car, believe it or not. And he definitely has a lot of support here
among the youth and the college
Right.
community, the
Yeah.
college community.
They like what he has to say.
Right, and I, as a historian, know the accomplishments of Roosevelt and the New Deal, and unfortunately, a majority of the voters pretend that they don't know any president earlier than Ronald Reagan. They never heard of Washington. They never heard of Lincoln. They never heard of Franklin Roosevelt, and that's the problem of the
Robert,
mass media.
We don't, yes, and we don't have that many historians here in town either, as far as that.
No, but
matters,
the media have an obligation to at least read history.
I agree with that 100%.
Okay, let's turn to the Democratic map, the other side of the Sanders map.
Okay.
And on this map, we have the green and the blue.
Yeah.
And Sanders was a minority. He only took a few scattered counties, including Athens County and, surprisingly, Gallia County. Two little counties down there in the southeast corner. And then he took some scattered counties around near Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the names of those counties. I don't know the map that well.
I think, is
I would
that
have to-
Hamilton? Is that
No,
Hamilton there in Cincinnati?
No, Cincinnati went for Clinton. Clinton is all the blue. That included Cincinnati, Columbus, and
Well, what's the county adjacent to
I think that might be
Hamilton?
Greene County,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. I'll have to look at the map.
Yeah.
Greene County is like Athens County, a
Right.
poverty region, and somehow or other there were enough suburbanites
Yeah.
who knew enough about Sanders to vote for him. So these are mostly
Right.
middle-class suburbanites who have escaped from the downtown
Yeah,
city.
they probably
Yeah.
work in Cincinnati.
Maybe they do. And then there were some northeast scattered people around the Toledo area.
Yeah, Lucas County. And
Yeah, maybe if
Wood County. I
one of
think's up
those
there.
might be
Yeah.
Wood. I don't know. I'll have
Yeah.
to go to the Board of Elections and
Right.
look at that diagram. Well, anyway, that's an interesting map. And Sanders got 62% of the vote in Athens County. And in the state then, Sanders was snowballed by Clinton. And I guess that's conclusion is
Yeah.
that 97% of the youth went for Bernie.
So
9% of the youth went for Hillary, and 9% went for Kasich.
do you
and
want
5%,
to comment on the Clinton-Sanders race right here in Athens County, or?
well, except that we see that, as I say, it was a surprise to me that Gallia County went for Sanders. And then I'm still trying
That's where Gallipolis
yeah,
is.
I don't know.
Gallia
There
County.
must be enough suburbanites in Gallipolis to have read something else besides, maybe they're anti-feminist, I don't know. Anyway, so getting back to the reasons for this, going back to 1950, the Korean War, the Republican Party is close to the Pentagon, and most of the generals and admirals are typically Republican. And the system of politics is very corrupt because the military have aligned themselves with Wall Street, and they have gerrymandered the districts, and they are able to buy the senators and the House of Representatives throughout the United States. And I'm a little bit anti-TV for causing this problem because they blur the distinction between a liberal and a conservative, and they block and blend the difference between a Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian. So,
Well, maybe you should define those.
okay,
Just give us a definition of a liberal and a conservative. And,
right, okay. Well, we can always review it again. But liberalism started out in England in the 1820s. And the old Liberal Party was called the Whig Party. The Whig Party was established in the 1670s. and they were opposed to the Tory party or the Conservative Party.
Right.
So the Conservative Party of England is the oldest party, and they were originally called the Friends of the King. And Whig is a kind of a slang term, and Tory is a slang term. Mm-hmm. And the opposition to the king were called the Country Party. And the Country Party called the Conservatives Tories, and that meant an Irish bandit. Well, the pro-King Party returned the compliment by saying, well, the Whigs are Scotch bandits. And they came from Scotland and Presbyterianism, and they were both tarred with corruption. But the established Church of England wanted to make the monopoly.
I suppose all you'd have to do is call an Englishman an Irishman, and that would be enough without calling him a bandit, I suppose, at that time, right?
Well, this was an implication.
Yes.
Okay. Because the Reformation began in Germany. Protestantism began in Germany.
Yeah.
And originally, Henry VIII condemned Martin Luther. And Henry VIII thought he was a Catholic and died as a Catholic.
Yeah.
But he got into a fight with Spain and the Pope over his marriage, and he decided to make the Archbishop of Canterbury his own appointee.
Okay.
And the former Catholic Church became the Anglican Church.
Okay.
He didn't have any fight with the doctrine.
Right.
His fight was with who controls the bishop.
I see.
And once he did that, that opened up a long controversy with Queen Elizabeth.
Okay.
Because he had two daughters. Okay. Mary was the daughter of the legitimate queen, Catherine.
Well, my point was, Robert, was the fact that, obviously all those people in the House of Commons or whatever in England were English people.
Yeah, they were all English.
Scottish people or Irish people.
Well,
so that's how you.
Well, eventually the Scots came in as equal.
Is that right?
In 1707.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, there was 1603.
Right.
1603 is the creation of the United Kingdom.
But at the time they put those labels on them, that wasn't the case.
What do you mean labels? Nobody put the label on. The king makes the decision.
No. I mean about calling a guy a Tory or.
That was done through propaganda.
Okay.
That was done in the House of Commons.
Propaganda's been around a long time.
Yeah, the people in the House of Commons didn't like the opposition, and they called them Whigs and Tories.
And Tories, yeah. That's what we were talking about.
And the opposition party accepted that.
Okay.
And the Whigs became the opposition party to the King's party.
Okay.
Okay, and they were largely merchants.
Okay.
And they become more and more Protestant under Queen Elizabeth.
Okay.
So you have a religious conflict.
Yeah, you were defining a liberal.
A liberal. Well, liberal comes out later.
Okay.
In 1820, you have the word liberalism invented.
Okay.
You have the French Revolution.
Okay.
Liberty, equality, and fraternity.
Okay.
And the American Revolution were the Friends of Liberty.
All right.
Liberty and was the goal of the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Now, in the United States, liberty meant liberty from the King of England.
Right.
Well, the English lost the American Revolution.
Right.
And Cornwallis had to surrender.
All right.
And Benjamin Franklin and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were all liberals.
Okay.
And they liberated themselves from the British Empire.
Okay, let's move ahead and define a conservative.
Okay, now a conservative means conserve things the way they were.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the status quo.
Okay.
Conserve the old-time religion.
Okay.
Conserve the old-time property rights.
Okay.
So a conservative is absolutely confused. What are they trying to confuse? What are they trying to conserve? Their own bank account? The rights of the King of England? The traditional Catholic religion or the Anglican religion?
Well, I think you said it when you said they wanted to conserve the status quo.
The status quo means that's what's... Yeah. This is the best possible of all worlds.
Okay.
That's the greatest comment, the greatest short definition of a conservative.
Okay.
They don't want any changes. They're afraid of progress.
Okay. All right.
Now, some of the liberals call themselves progressive.
Yeah.
And they say, well, we want progress. We want to change the old status quo. So socialism
Well,
is...
Robert, I recently was talking to somebody, and he made the distinction between a liberal and a progressive.
Yeah, that's minor.
Well...
Okay, you think it's major?
Not to him, it was.
All right, what did he say?
He accepted liberals.
Okay, he was a liberal.
No, I don't think so. I don't know what his status is, but he accepted liberals, but he didn't accept progressives. He said a progressive was a liberal that had gone awry.
Okay, now I think what he meant by gone awry is the homosexual question.
Oh, perhaps. And I don't know if we have time for that here today.
Okay, well, that's what I think was in his mind.
Perhaps.
I think that's what Cruz says.
Yeah.
Cruz would like to overturn the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
Now, the people who want homosexual rights call themselves progressives.
Oh, I see.
But progressives had an older history.
Yeah.
In 1898.
Well, how long's that Progressive magazine been around?
That's been around since 1898.
1898.
There were two kinds of progressives.
Oh, I guess.
Okay, you heard of the Spanish-American War.
Right.
And you heard of McKinley.
Sure.
And you heard...
William McKinley here from Ohio.
And you heard of Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes.
Okay, Teddy Roosevelt called himself a
he did, but I don't know.
So there are the Teddy Roosevelt progressives.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin became the leader of the progressive states. And this magazine...
I don't know. I don't think Teddy Roosevelt called himself a progressive.
He called himself a progressive. This progressive
Hill.
magazin is edited in
Wow.
Madison, Wisconsin.
See, I would have assumed that was something, that had just come about,
No.
but wow. So,
1890s.
now the people at Nation magazine...
Now, they are liberals.
They're liberals.
And they call themselves Liberty from the Civil War. They were founded in 1865.
Wow.
And they said, we want to keep liberalism going, but nationalism is more powerful than liberalism. And they call themselves the National... That's what they call the name magazine, because nationalism is more popular than liberalism.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, the Nation.
But it is basically a liberal paper who also gives rights to the socialists to write articles.
Yeah.
So it's basically liberal with a little bit of a socialist tinge.
Right.
And progressive is basically progressive with a little bit of liberal socialist tinge.
Okay.
So they intertwine.
Okay.
Now, this comes to Roosevelt's New Deal. What did Roosevelt do? He incorporated Teddy Roosevelt's progressives, and he incorporated the traditional Democratic Party of New York City, and he got a few progressives and socialists. He was about 1/4 socialist.
Yeah.
So Social Security and TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, was socialist ideas.
Yeah. Now he ran as a Republican.
Who? Franklin Roosevelt was a Democrat.
No. I thought you were talking about Teddy being a progressive. I didn't know that we were talking about Franklin.
Right. Okay. Franklin incorporated Teddy Roosevelt's progressives.
On that. Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson's liberalism.
Right.
And he talked about the New Freedom.
Okay.
Which was liberty.
So now, back to Teddy. He called himself a progressive.
Yeah.
He was a Republican, or at least he ran as a Republican.
He was a progressive Republican. There were two wings of the Republican Party.
Okay.
A conservative wing and a progressive wing.
And what about, what would that Blue Moose Party, what would that have been?
A Blue Moose Party is the same as the Progressive Party.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It's the same as the donkey represents Democrats.
Okay.
And elephants are supposed to represent Republicans.
Right.
So in the old-time when illiterates voted, they saw an elephant. Oh, so that means Republican. He never forgets. That's the grand old party.
So
okay.
They picked
That's an
donkey.
elephant.
They picked a donkey.
And the donkey is supposed to be stubborn.
Yeah.
He wants to be, he's going to stick to the old-time party. He's a blue dog Democrat. Okay. He's a yellow dog Democrat.
Yeah.
Now, the people who gave that label, donkey and elephant, was a Republican journalist by the name of Nast.
Oh, yeah. I
He
remember,
was the most popular journalist of the
yeah,
1880s.
Yeah.
And he gave those names, the GOP. Well, I don't use the GOP.
But he drew cartoons and stuff too.
Yeah, he put the donkey on it,
illustrations,
right, so forth and
I
so on.
remember seeing some.
So animals become symbols of parties and nations. And then, of course, the bear represents Russia, and the bulldog represents Britain, and the eagle represents the United States.
So maybe that's what Eric Blair had in mind when he wrote Animal Farm.
Okay.
Okay, what do we want to go with next?
Well, let me see. I was talking about the arms race and how the Republicans, the present-day Republicans, glorify Ronald Reagan as the only president of any significance and try to put history down the memory hole, as George Orwell would say.
Well, you know what I find when I hear about somebody glorifying somebody, the Democrats, or at least the older Democrats like you, or older liberals, it's Franklin
Roosevelt.
D. Roosevelt. But
we're
then
friendly,
on the
we're
Republican side, it always is Ronald Reagan. You know?
In recent years.
Or or they say, or if they go back a ways, it's Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, but they.
I don't know what the Democrats.
All right, let's talk about Abraham.
Like.
Abraham Lincoln is a very sore point, because Richard Nixon is not interested in liberating blacks. Richard Nixon went with the Southern strategy. He won over the traditional Southern Democrats from the Civil War and got them converted to Republicans. So the South has done 180 degrees.
Yeah.
The South used to be solidly Democrat,
Right,
because they hated Lincoln, the Republican.
Right, yeah.
And then under Roosevelt, it began to be coalition together. Roosevelt won them all. He won the Southern Democrats and the Lincoln Progressives in one big New Deal party. And then after Roosevelt, Nixon changed the party alignment.
Yeah.
And we now have the bastion of white racism in the southern states. And those are the states that Hillary Clinton won in the Democratic Party, mostly with black votes, opposed to the white Republican Party of the South.
Yeah.
So racism is still with us.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. Okay. So the Democrats like to expose Republicans. Well, what happened to Abraham Lincoln and the fight to liberate the slaves? Now that's where Martin Luther King comes in. That's where Lyndon Johnson.
Matter of fact, if I didn't know this, I think it was in Chris Matthews' book that said that Richard Nixon, you mentioned him earlier, was the one who introduced to the rest of Congress or politics Martin King. And
Now, wait a minute now. Who introduced Martin King?
Richard Nixon, he gave Richard Nixon credit for as a senator. He introduced Richard Nixon.
Wait a minute. You're forgetting about John Kennedy.
Well, yeah, John Kennedy was there too, but
I
think he introduced him to John Kennedy.
Are we talking about what went on in the Congress or what went on the mass media?
Well, this was a book written by Chris Matthews. You know Chris.
I know Chris Matthews. He's a journalist.
Right.
But I think we have to get the facts a little bit straight. When Kennedy was elected in 1960...
this was prior to 60. But, Nixon and Kennedy were very close friends in the Senate.
All right. Nixon was elected in 1946 to the House.
Right.
He's older than John Kennedy.
Well, yeah, he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
John Kennedy came to the Senate in 1952.
Okay.
And Richard Nixon was promoted from the House to the Senate.
Right.
And then he was immediately promoted again by Eisenhower as the vice president.
Vice president, yeah.
So Nixon had more status than John Kennedy, a young man.
Yeah.
And then Kennedy ran against Nixon in 1960 for the presidency.
Right. We both know that, Robert.
Well,
But-
there was a little bit of confusion about who introduced whom, to the public or to the Senate.
You're probably right. It was probably to the Senate
Okay.
that Nixon introduced to John Kennedy. He introduced Martin Luther King, and then
That's a minor footnote in history.
yeah,
As far as the public knows, it was John Kennedy who first put Martin Luther King on television.
yeah.
Martin Luther King was civil disobedience
Well,
in Montgomery, Alabama.
John Kennedy was president before Richard Nixon, so
Wait a minute now, say that again.
John Kennedy became
All right,
president.
are you talking
before-
about the Senate? Are you talking about 1952, or do you want to talk about 1960? Where are you chronologically?
Okay, well, okay, if you go up to 1960, when John Kennedy became president, that's when he introduced Martin Luther King
To the public of the
to
United
the
States.
public,
Yeah, okay.
right along there.
That's what counts for the voters.
Yeah,
Not what
But-
happened privately on the Senate floor.
but but he had a rough time. John Kennedy had a rough time. He had Al Gore Sr. and
Now, what year are we in now?
in the 60s when it come down to the when they were, of course Kennedy wasn't around to do it, but you know they started working on the civil rights issues and all that, and he had a lot of Democratic opposition.
You're talking about John Kennedy?
Yeah.
John,
Yeah,
John
among,
Ken- all right,
you know, the
let's,
ones in,
let's stick to John Kennedy. John Kennedy was elected in 1960,
right,
and he ran against Hubert Humphrey in the primary.
in the primary.
Yes.
Okay.
And he beat Hubert Humphrey.
Yeah.
And John Kennedy was more conservative than Hubert Humphrey because Hubert Humphrey, mayor of Minnesota, was the leader of the civil rights movement and went to the Democratic convention and tried to get blacks separated, blacks who had been segregated in the South,
Yeah.
represented as delegates.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of Strom Thurmond, South Carolina
Right,
Dixiecrat
yeah,
movement.
right, yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
That's what happened in 1948. Okay.
Okay.
So in 1960, Hubert Humphrey was regarded as more liberal than John Kennedy.
Yeah.
Now, Hubert Humphrey lost,
Right.
and then Kennedy was shot.
Right.
And
Johnson.
Johnson became, the vice president, became the president.
Right.
And he got bogged down in the Vietnam War.
And then Humphrey became
His vice president. And then Humphrey became more conservative because he thought he could get the presidency through Johnson.
Yeah.
That's how politicians
Yep.
change their status.
Anyway, Robert, we're going to have to stop here for a second. You're watching ACTV,
Okay.
Channel 9 in
Okay.
Athens, Ohio. Dr. Robert Whaley.
Right.
My name is Steve Antle.
All right.
And we're talking about the results of the primary
In Ohio and
in
Florida.
Ohio
And Florida.
and Florida.
I think I ought to change the subject slightly
Yeah.
by saying we ought to say something about the Strickland-Portman race for Senate.
Yeah.
What happened there? Well, both Portman and Strickland didn't have any primary opposition. They got a courtesy vote. And the only significant information that we could learn is that it was a little bit bad news for Strickland because the total vote, courtesy vote for Portman, was 1,314,000 out of the total, and Strickland only won 726,000. So Strickland and Portland are going to have a tight race in November to see who gets that Senate seat
Yeah.
because of the strength of the money of the Republican Party and the weakness of the divided Democrats on the senatorial race. But Strickland is trying to make a comeback after his defeat by Kasich. I think that's about all I want to say about the Strickland.
You've met Ted Strickland. Haven't
I've met him several times.
you? Yeah.
He knows me by face. And he knows my wife by face.
Yeah. Sherrod Brown. You know.
I know Sherrod Brown, and he knows me by face. I've never met Portman, Portman sends me a letter and I just throw them in the gas.
Is that right?
No, I don't think I've ever voted for a Republican. My first vote was for John Kennedy in 1960.
Yeah.
But I did not vote for Lyndon Johnson because of the Vietnam War.
Right.
I threw away my vote to a socialist.
Yeah.
Now I guess I'm going to throw away my vote again for
Oh,
Bernie
don't
Sanders.
say that. Don't say that.
Although Bernie Sanders is going to do better than the Socialist Labor Party did.
Right.
Socialism is making a comeback.
Okay. You want to talk about Marco Rubio? What happened there in Florida?
Yes, that's briefly. What happened to Martin Rubio? Well, Trump won 99 delegates, the big vote, and that was a winner-take-all. And Rubio got 0 delegates. So he not only retired from the presidential race, he's retired from the Senate, and his political career seems to be in the wastebasket. However, Rubio may come back again in Cleveland if there's a block convention.
Yeah.
He may not be dead. He might.
Well, he's a young he's a young man, and I don't think that his political career is over. I think you'll be hearing about Marco Rubio somewhere down the line. So.
Okay, so then we might say briefly that the Republicans did well in Missouri.
Yeah, how about Trump?
Trump took Missouri.
Delegate.
He got 25 delegates from that, so he keeps gaining delegates.
What do you think of the state of Missouri? Do you know much about it?
Yes, it's a border state. It's a border state on the eve of the Civil War.
Okay.
And
So which side did they go with?
Missouri was a border state.
Okay, but what I'm saying is...
All right, let's talk about the free and the slave.
Okay.
The free states were Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, and so forth.
Right.
St. Louis has the great port all the way to New Orleans.
Mississippi River.
Right.
Goes down through
Now,
there.
southern Missouri tended to be southern,
Okay.
and northern Missouri tended to be northern. And St. Louis was a commercial city.
Yeah.
So when the Civil War broke out, South Carolina led the secessionist movement.
Yeah.
And they took 11 states. Virginia seceded. Tennessee seceded. But Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri were 4 border states. They were slave states by state law, but they didn't secede from the Union.
Yeah.
Okay. So Lincoln was playing politics with the border states. And he was born in Kentucky, and his wife came from Kentucky.
Yeah.
So the loyalty of Kentucky was much of a question mark,
Okay.
which is the question of Delaware and Maryland.
Yeah.
And Maryland was completely surrounded Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
and Maryland was a slave state.
Yeah.
So when Lincoln got to the White House, he called upon the Massachusetts militia to come and protect the White House
Yeah.
from possible Southern invasion of White House.
Sure.
Okay, so the border states were not fighting in the Civil War. Some of them volunteered for the South, some of them volunteered for the North. Okay, now as the North won, we have a new border state, West Virginia. After the Battle of Gettysburg, the western part of Virginia, which had no
I think
slaves.
West Virginia became a state in 1863.
Right.
Yep.
They said, well, it looks like the North is going to win. And the slave part of Virginia was all in the eastern part where they had tobacco and cotton and a lot of labor to do.
Right.
See? So West Virginia seceded from the state of West Virginia and applied to get into the Union. And Lincoln said, well, welcome. I have 2 more or less votes in the Senate. Well, then in 1864, we have the Battle of Atlanta, and the North won it.
Yeah.
Sherman's
Right.
victory. And then everybody said, well, the South's going to lose.
Yeah.
And the South surrendered at Appomattox.
Yeah.
Grant went down there and took the surrender, and then Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated for the second term.
Yeah.
and then he was assassinated.
Yeah.
So anyway, Missouri has had a border center reputation.
Well, you have St. Louis and you have Kansas City on the other end of the state,
Right.
in the western part of the
Two
state.
urban cities, and then a lot of country villages.
Yeah, it's just
Right.
And
as far as the politics of 2016 is, it was a very close race between Trump and Cruz, and it was a very close race between Hillary and Sanders.
Yeah.
Because of where their loyalties are.
Yeah. Well,
Hillary has the black vote.
Yeah.
Sanders has the liberal socialist whites who still remember the New Deal.
Right.
That's what it all amounts to.
Yeah. Missouri borders Arkansas there
Right,
too.
right. Now, Ferguson, Missouri, plays a big role in the election.
Right.
Do you know anything about Ferguson?
Yes, I do, and I don't know if I want to comment on it because I don't think my comments would be too popular. But
well, I think that's the reason why Ferguson, the upheaval in Ferguson, is the reason why it was a very close vote.
Yeah.
In both the Democrat and Republican contests.
Yeah. Ferguson,
Because
so just it's a suburb of St. Louis.
Right.
And no, I don't. I don't wish to comment on that. I tend to be pro law enforcement. So
you're going to be pro law enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then the question is, we talking about state law or national law, civil rights law, or states' rights?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's the problem of today in Missouri and
we wanted to talk a little bit about Trump and Illinois. What happened there?
Okay. All right, I think we've covered
Missouri.
Now, in Illinois, Trump won big in the Republican side. He got 54 delegates, 38% of the vote, and 550,000 votes. Cruz got only 9 delegates. Casey got 5 delegates. And the big problem for Trump was Chicago. He tried to go to Chicago, and there were demonstrations.
Right. Yeah,
and the blacks of Chicago all voted in the Democratic primary. So it was
Hillary and
a big victory for Trump over Cruz.
Yeah, Clinton and Obama both from the Chicago area. So
yeah, well, that's Trump did. Now, what about North Carolina?
Yeah, what about it?
Trump won another 29 delegates, 42% of the vote. Cruz got 27% of the vote, 27 delegates and 36% of the vote. Casey's only got 9%. Rubio was still in the race with 6 delegates. So North Carolina was another victory for Trump. Okay.
So what do you think North Carolina's different than South Carolina? I mean,
well, it's not quite as deep south.
Okay.
South Carolina led the secessionist movement.
Yeah.
South Carolina led the Dixiecrat movement.
Right.
And South Carolina is changing now.
Yeah.
They have a new regime there. And they dumped Jeb Bush. And South Carolina had this interesting assassination by a white who came from North Carolina, went down and went into a black church, a black Methodist church, and shot 9 black congregants. Right. Well, the state of South Carolina is trying to tone down this racial confrontation.
Yeah.
And
Nikki Haley is the female Republican governor of South Carolina.
but she was descended from Hindus.
Yeah.
Her father and mother came to this country to manufacture textiles.
Right.
But then she became a convert to the Baptists and won the race.
Yeah.
So Haley is trying to tone down the racism.
Yeah.
And DeMint, you know who DeMint is? Senator DeMint from South Carolina.
Right.
He voluntarily steps down and goes to the Heritage Foundation and appoints a black Republican to the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to reconcile the races in South Carolina, and South Carolina is drifting northward and trying to become a national player now.
Well,
That's
perhaps they will if they could keep Lindsey Graham quiet.
Well, Lindsey Graham put his hat in the ring. He stayed only 3 months.
Yeah.
Saw that people don't want another war, dropped out.
Yeah.
And Lindsey Graham's campaign, there were 17 Republicans in the original race.
Yeah.
And he decided, no, there's not going to be a long war in the Middle East. Both the Democrats and Republicans don't want a long war in the Middle East. So Sanders is making grounds and Trump is making grounds because they're both attacking Wall Street and they're both making signals that they're not for a war, a long 30-year war in the Middle East.
Right.
So the warmongers are kind of in the shadow now, even in South Carolina.
Yeah.
But racism is still alive on the national level. Well, you want to go to a new subject? About advertisement in the campaign? You want to say anything about that?
Well, that's fine, yeah. I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Okay, well, here is an interesting table in the New York Times. You can't see it. It's too small.
Yeah,
okay.
That's all right.
But it shows the 17 candidates, and it shows how, this was a New York Times article on the 17th of March, and it shows how Trump put $10 million of his own money into advertising. But he won $1 trillion, $900 million in excess advertisement because the rest of the mass media kept replaying Trump's campaign.
Yeah.
So he gets free advertising.
Oh, yeah, he does. It doesn't matter if you turn on Fox or if you turn on CNN.
So he knows how to manipulate the media.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a master at that because he's right there. He doesn't have to pay for that advertising.
So this article says measuring Trump's big advantage for free media, and he put in $10 million, and then he gets billions and trillions that I just mentioned. He's number one on this line, okay? Way out here. This is Trump's free advertisement. And down here you have Jindal with only 3%.
Right. But when I'm
he got very little.
You got to remember, Donald's conducted business for a long time with Madison Avenue.
He's a good propagandist. He's a good propagandist.
Yeah.
Now, interesting, the second largest winner in this free advertisement is Hillary Clinton. And then comes Bernie Sanders. Then comes Cruz. No, I'll take that back. Then comes Cruz in free advertisement. Then comes Jeb Bush. And then comes Rubio, and they fade out.
Ben Carson.
In other words, Rubio got 20% free advertisement, okay, and Bush got.
I got a question for you, Robert. You research these things closer than I do.
Right.
I see Ben Carson's name on there now. Did the blacks support Ben Carson or not? I mean, there are very few people that I always talk to that supported Ben Carson were white.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying I don't know whether
very few blacks are going to change their registration to Republican.
Okay.
Now, the Republican Party on the Fox channel, they got this idea, Fox got the idea, we're going to have a TV forum long before the official primary. Mm-hmm. And we're going to give maximum publicity to all of these Republican candidates.
Right.
So somebody gave Ben Carson some money as a black doctor who's qualified
Right.
and could be a vice president for this new multiracial Republican Party.
Yeah.
And he could even be a good Surgeon General.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, Carson didn't make very many votes inside the Republican primary. And eventually he had to drop out. And now he's endorsed Trump. He's gone with the winner.
Yeah.
And Trump says, well, our fight is over now. and Carson made enough money to have an estate down in Florida.
Yeah.
And his estate is right next to Trump's.
I see.
So he went down to
in
Florida.
Palm Beach.
Yeah, no, on the Keys. He just went around the corner.
Keys. Oh, I thought they were.
Yeah, he
I
just
thought
went
Trump was
around
in
to the
Palm
corner and
Beach.
said, well, I forgive you for all of your campaign, and you're on my side now.
Yeah.
In other words,
I don't know.
he caved in for the money. So he campaigned as an original Seventh-day Adventist. He
Yeah.
was going to get some Christian vote against
Right.
Cruz.
Yeah.
But not many people who voted thought of Trump as a Seventh-day Adventist. They thought of himself as a black. And he was a token black. He was a token black in the Republican Party. And the Republicans have not been very successful in recruiting blacks at the mass ballot box.
Yeah.
And most blacks are going to stick with Hillary. And Bernie Sanders has trouble penetrating the black because they say, we don't know you, you're from Vermont, but we know Hillary.
Right.
She's been campaigning for us since 1993. And Bill Clinton is very friendly to the blacks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think Tony Roberts said
Yeah.
that Bill Clinton was the first black president.
Yeah, so the black caucus is all supporting Hillary because they know who she is.
Yeah.
They don't know Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a man for the youth.
Right.
A few young blacks may support
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders. That's the
Well,
problem.
I see blacks in the Sanders crowd.
Yeah, young
You know,
ones.
yeah. College students.
College students, right.
Yeah.
They're looking to the future.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Here's a question for you, Robert. How do we measure Trump's advertising advantages over the Republicans and the Democrats?
well, the final conclusion is that Hillary Clinton got $748 million free advertisement from CNN and PBS and New York Times speeches. And she was third on this list. Cruz was fourth. No, Clinton was second.
No.
Third was Sanders. Fourth was Cruz. Fifth was Trump. Jeb Bush. Fifth was Jeb Bush with only $82 million.
Yeah.
So it gets less and less.
Yeah.
And Jindal was last of the 17. He got $3 million
Okay.
of free
I guess
advertisement.
that's been answered.
Yeah,
what are the class differences and income levels between Hillary Clinton and
Well, that's
and
an
Bernie
interesting
Sanders?
bit of statistics. Let's change folders here a little bit. I've got plenty of notes, don't I?
Yeah.
Okay. This article came out in the USA Today.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can see that.
No, they can't, but they know it's an article.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can find
It's-
it in USA Today.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was USA Today. And it was 18th of March. And the article says, we only got 2 minutes. So maybe we ought to leave that article for next week.
Okay.
And we'll try and summarize what we've accomplished today. We didn't go as fast as we had hoped, but we've made a dent on it.
Oh yeah, this material goes slow.
Yeah. Okay. So
I sometimes get sidetracked.
well, we
you-
learned a little bit more about Kennedy and liberalism and
Right.
Nixon and conservatism
Right.
and the difficulty of the Republican Party in the money and the differences between Sanders and Clinton on corruption and what you can believe. I think that most people believe that Sanders is the most honest of the candidates. And he's raising all of his
Definitely
money.
the most honest between the Democrats. Yeah.
And the Republicans.
And-
What would you say among the Republicans? Who's the most honest of the Republicans?
The ones in the race now, I'd say Kasich is the most honest of the three.
Okay, that's probably true.
Yeah. Before that, I would have said it would have been Ben Carson.
Before that, okay.
Yeah. Before he dropped out.
But he
I would say-
tanked.
I think Ben Carson would have.
But you're
Good man,
basically a
good man.
libertarian.
I'm a libertarian, yes. But Bernie Sanders, yeah, he's a choir boy compared to Hillary Clinton, you know.
Yeah.
And well, the studies even show that. I'm not making that up on my own, people. I'm telling you what you see is when they take these polls and everything.
Right.
You know, people don't trust Hillary. They might vote for her, but they don't trust her. You know?
Okay.
So that makes no sense to me, but
All right.
maybe it does to you.
All right.
But we've only got a minute left here, Robert. So
Okay,
you want
well,
to just sum this up?
I would like to sum this up by saying that I am a partisan for Bernie Sanders, and I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary. I still wear his button. I'm going to wear his button all the way to the Philadelphia Convention, and he may be able to at least block the nomination for Hillary, and it may be a
Right.
blocked convention. That's a thing to come. Watch out
Yeah.
for the delegate race. The delegates is the key to watch.
Well, I
at this
hope.
time.
Yeah, I'd just like to end this by saying I hope Robert's wishes come true, and that Mrs. Clinton doesn't get the nomination. She gets what she deserves, which should be an indictment coming any day now.
But my wife still votes for
but-
Hillary.
but anyway,
she's a feminist first.
Yeah. So, but
Anyway,
and by the way, Robert here is not endorsing Bernard Sanders. We don't do that here on ACT.
well, the vote is all over in Ohio.
I know that. But, you know, this thing, when it goes up on YouTube, is seen in other states. So that's about all I have to say. And what is it? Democracy.
No, debate is the
Debate.
oxygen of democracy, and you and I and our friend Dave DeWitt have to keep the debate going.
That's right. Thank you for watching.